The shot burned a line of fire along Eli Morgan's ribs. He clamped a gloved hand to the wound, the wool of his shirt already stiffening with blood. He did not look back. The border town was a smear of yellow light and gun smoke behind him. 3 men were down in the dust of the cantina. 2 of them his, 1 of theirs. It was a bad trade. The bounty hunters had been waiting for him, tipped off by the bartender for a share of the silver. Now they were on his heels, and his horse was tiring. He pushed the mare hard, leaving the scrubby flatlands and forcing her up into the high, broken country of the Arizona Territory. This was 1873, and the land was as raw as his wound. He rode until the mare's breath came in ragged, tearing gasps. The moon, a cold white chip, gave just enough light to show him the canyon walls rising like black teeth against the stars. By the second day, the mare was done. She stumbled, her legs snapping in a dry wash, and Eli had to put her down with his last bullet save one. The sound of the shot was terrifyingly loud in the silence. It echoed, a flat, final crack that advertised his position to anyone within 5 miles. He cut the best meat he could from her flank, stuffed it in his saddlebag, and walked on, leaving the saddle and rifle behind. He had only his pistol, 1 bullet, and a knife. He was a solitary man, quiet by nature and made quieter by a past that lay on him like a shroud. He had been running for 3 years, from the law, from himself, from the memory of a burned-out cabin in Texas. The bounty on his head was for killing a sheriff's deputy, but the story was more complicated than the paper said. The deputy had been part of the militia raid, the one that took everything. Now he was just a man walking. The dry highlands clawed at him. By the 4th day, the horse meat was gone and the bullet graze was hot with infection. His side was a sheet of rigid pain. Thirst was a constant, dry rasp in his throat. The world shrank to the agony in his ribs and the need to put one boot in front of the other. He saw shapes in the rocks, men pointing rifles, women turning away from him in sorrow. He was walking through his own ghosts. He climbed a high ridge, his lungs burning in the thin air, and saw nothing but more ridges, more canyons, more red rocks stretching to a pale, indifferent sky. He was dying. He knew the signs. The cold that started in the fingers and toes, the light-headed feeling that was almost pleasant. He was not afraid of it. He was just tired. He had been tired for 3 years. He stumbled down a shale slope, his boots sliding, and fell hard at the bottom. He lay there for a long time, the sharp rocks biting into his back. He was ready to let the sun and the buzzards have him. Then he smelled it. Faint, high on the wind. Not a forest fire, but something small, controlled. Wood smoke. He raised his head. His eyes were cracked and blurry. He squinted, searching the canyon wall opposite him. Nothing, just sheer red cliff. But the smell was real. It was pinon pine. It was life. He got to his feet, driven by a force that was no longer his own will, but something older, more animal. He followed the scent, moving along the base of the canyon. The sun was setting, painting the cliffs in colors of blood and rust. He pushed through a thicket of manzanita, the branches tearing at his face, and found it. A crack in the rock, no wider than his shoulders, hidden by the brush. The smoke was stronger here. He slipped through the opening and found himself in a different world. It was a box canyon, hidden from the main valley, no more than an acre wide. A small spring trickled from the rock, feeding a patch of green grass and a few struggling stalks of corn. 3 small wickiups, shelters made of branches and hides, were huddled against the far wall. A small fire, banked with stones, let out the thin stream of smoke he had followed. He saw them, 3 women, Apache. They froze, like deer spotting the wolf. One was at the fire, stirring a pot. One was mending a moccasin. The youngest was hauling water from the spring. They stared at him, their faces masks of disbelief and sudden, terrible fear. Eli raised a hand, palm out. "Water," he rasped. Then the strength that had carried him this far broke. His knees buckled. He pitched forward onto the hard-packed dirt, his hand still reaching, and the world went black. He woke to arguing. The language was sharp, guttural, full of clicking sounds. He kept his eyes closed, listening. His body ached, but the burning in his side had been replaced by a different, cleaner sting. Someone had treated his wound. "He will bring soldiers," one voice said, low and sharp. He felt the anger in it. "He is dying. Look at him. He is no threat," a softer, younger voice replied. "A white man is always a threat." This voice was calmer, deeper, holding authority. "They are a plague. They follow each other. He will die, and we will leave him where they find him." "Nalin, no, we cannot. It is not the way." "The way is gone. Sani, the way was burned with our families. Now there is only this." That was the angry one. "Tala is right. We should kill him while he sleeps." "We will not," Nalin, the leader, said. Her voice was final. "But we will not trust him. Sani, check his bindings." Eli felt a small hand test the rawhide strips at his wrists. He had not even realized they were there. He was tied to a post that held up a small brush arbor. He opened his eyes. The three women stood over him. The one called Nalin was the oldest, perhaps 25. Her hair was cut short, a sign of mourning. She had a strong, square face, eyes that had seen too much, and a stillness that marked her as the one in charge. She held a long, sharp skinning knife. The one called Tala was younger, maybe 20. Her face was beautiful but marred by a fury that seemed permanent, etched into the lines around her mouth. She held an old army carbine, and it was pointed at his chest. The youngest, Sani, was barely a woman, 16, maybe 17. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of terror and a deep, unsettling curiosity. She held nothing but a small clay pot. "He is awake," Sani whispered. Tala cocked the carbine. The sound was metallic, final. Nalin put a hand on the rifle's barrel and pushed it down. "Not yet." She looked at Eli. Her eyes were black, unreadable. "Why are you here?" Eli's throat was sandpaper. "Lost," he managed. "Bounty hunters." Tala spat on the ground near his head. "Lies. All white men lie." "My horse died," Eli said, his voice cracking. He tried to sit up, but the bindings held him fast, and a wave of dizziness washed over him. He slumped back. "Water, please." Sani looked at Nalin, a silent question. Nalin watched Eli for a long moment, her gaze raking over his filthy clothes, his haggard face, the bloody bandage on his side. She was weighing him. Finally, she gave a short, sharp nod. Sani darted forward, knelt, and lifted a wooden ladle of water to his lips. It was the best thing he had ever tasted. He drank greedily, spilling some down his chin. When he was done, Nalin knelt beside him. The knife was still in her hand. "You are our prisoner," she said in clear, careful English. "You will tell us why you came. If you lie, I will know, and I will let Tala shoot you." "I told you," Eli said, his voice a little stronger. "I was in a fight, in town. They chased me. I ran. My horse broke its leg. I walked. I smelled your fire." "What town?" "Tres Cruces." Nalin's eyes narrowed. "That is 4 days' walk. You walked 4 days with that wound?" "5. I think I lost count." Tala said something in Apache, her voice full of contempt. Nalin ignored her. "Who are you?" Nalin asked. "Eli Morgan." "What do you want here?" "A place to rest, to heal. Then I will go. I mean you no harm." "You breathe, so you are harm," Tala snapped, also in English. She had learned it at a mission, and every word tasted like ash in her mouth. "You are white. You are a disease." "Tala, enough," Nalin commanded. She stood up. We will feed you. You will stay tied. At night, we will tie your feet. If you shout, if you try to escape, if you look at my sisters in the wrong way, I will cut your throat while you sleep. Do you understand?" Eli nodded. "I understand." They left him. The sun climbed, and he watched them. They moved with a quiet, practiced grace, a rhythm of survival. Sani tended the small corn patch, her hands gentle on the green stalks. Tala took the carbine and climbed the canyon wall to a high ledge, taking up a sentry post. Nayland worked with herbs and roots, grinding them with a stone. They were ghosts, living in a place that time had forgotten, but they were not weak. The land around them was beautiful and terrible. The red cliffs held the heat, baking the small canyon. The wind was constant, a dry whisper that carried the scent of dust and juniper. At night, the temperature plummeted. The cold was sharp, biting, and in the distance, from the high ridges, came the long, lonely howl of a wolf. It was a sound that matched the feeling in Eli's own chest. He drifted in and out of a fevered sleep. They fed him a thin broth of roots and rabbit. They unbound his hands to let him eat. But Tala stood over him with the carbine the whole time. Nayland changed his bandage. Her hands were rough but clean. She had washed his wound with a sharp-smelling herb. It still hurt, but the fire of infection was banking. Each night, they tied his ankles as well, running the rawhide to a stake in the ground. He was completely helpless. He lay under the brush arbor, watching the stars, a prisoner of 3 women who had every reason to kill him. He woke slowly, over days. His strength began to seep back, a little at a time. The fever broke. The world came into sharper focus. He watched them live. He saw the way they moved together, a silent language of shared glances and small gestures. They sang sometimes, low, sad songs in their fading language. They were tending the fire of a world that had been almost extinguished. He saw their strength. They were not just surviving, they were living. They hunted with snares and the carbine. They gathered roots he did not recognize. They repaired their wickiups with mud and branches. There was a toughness in them, a resilience that shamed his own weary running. As he watched, he began to see the shadows behind their eyes, the ghosts they carried. One afternoon, while Nayland and Sani were away gathering, Tala sat cleaning the carbine, her back to him. She thought he was asleep. He watched as her hands slowed, then stopped. She grew very still. She was looking at a small, faded patch of blue cloth tied to her belt. Her shoulders began to shake. A silent, terrible grief. She did not make a sound, but her whole body was racked with it. He closed his eyes, pretending sleep, giving her the privacy of her sorrow. He knew what she was seeing. He had seen it himself. He saw Nayland, the leader, standing on the canyon rim at sunset, her arms crossed, looking out to the east. She was not looking for danger. She was looking for something that was gone. She was the anchor, the one who had to be strong, and he could see the cost of it. Her face, in repose, was a map of loss. Her family had been Reservation Apache, good Indians. They had trusted the treaties. They had trusted the agent. Nayland had been promised to a progressive man, a scout for the army. But the agent had other ideas. He wanted Nayland for himself. When her father refused, the agent declared him a renegade, and the soldiers came. Nayland had watched them hang her father and brother for a crime they did not commit. She had fled that night, the agent's laughter chasing her into the hills. Tala's past was simpler and more brutal. Her village had not been on a reservation. They had tried to live the old way, hidden in the mountains. But the cavalry had found them. It was not a battle, it was a massacre. They came at dawn. The soldiers were drunk, shouting. Tala had grabbed her baby, a little boy of 6 months, and run for the river. A bullet had struck the child in her arms, killing him instantly. She had hidden under a riverbank, clutching his body for a whole day, listening to the screams and the fire. When she finally crept out, the village was gone. There was only ash and silence. Her hatred of white men was not an idea. It was a physical thing, a scar on her soul. And Sani, she was the youngest, the most vulnerable. Her family had been struck by the coughing sickness the soldiers brought, one by one. Her mother, her father, her 2 older sisters had died. Sani had nursed them, had sat with them, had buried them. She was alone, starving, when Nalan and Tala had found her, wandering the high desert, talking to the ghosts of her family. Her curiosity about Eli was the curiosity of someone who had lost everything and was desperate for any human connection, even a dangerous one. These were the women who held him captive, 3 survivors, bound by a shared tragedy and a fierce will to live. Eli said little. He answered their questions. He asked for nothing but water. His silence, his stillness, began to unnerve them more than threats would have. They did not know what to make of him. They spoke Apache among themselves constantly, fast and sharp. He could tell they were talking about him. He would catch his name. Morgan, mixed in with their words. They tested him. One day, Tala kicked over his water ladle, spilling it into the dust. "Get it yourself, white man," she sneered. Eli looked at the dark patch of mud, then back at her. He did not move, did not speak. He just watched her, his eyes flat. He sat there, thirsty, for hours, until Sani defied Tala and brought him more. Another time, Nalan brought him a piece of tough, half-cooked rabbit. "Is this good enough for you?" she asked, her voice laced with sarcasm. "It is good," he said, and he ate it without complaint. His patience was a wall they could not get over. He was not like the men they had known, the loud, brutal soldiers, the lying agents, the rough prospectors. His quiet was a mystery. They did not trust it. Then the storm came. It rolled in from the north one night, a wall of black clouds that swallowed the stars. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. The wind howled through the canyon, a high, screaming sound. Rain began to fall, not in drops, but in solid, freezing sheets that turned quickly to sleet. The brush arbor Eli slept under was useless. It tore apart in minutes. He was soaked, shivering violently, the rawhide at his wrists and ankles shrinking, cutting into his skin. He heard the women shouting to each other, trying to secure their wickiups. The wind ripped the hide covering from Sani's shelter. It was too small for all of them. The main wickiup, Nalan and Tala's, was larger, built against an overhang in the rock. He saw Nalan fighting her way through the sleet toward him. She had her knife. He thought, for a second, that she had decided to end this, to kill him and be done with it. But she knelt and sawed through his bindings. "Get up!" she yelled over the wind. He staggered to his feet, his limbs numb, the pain in his side a dull, frozen ache. She shoved him toward the main key-up. "In!" He crawled through the low opening. Tala was inside, her face a mask of rage, the carbine in her lap. Sani was huddled in the back, crying quietly. Nalan scrambled in after him, pulling a stiff buffalo hide over the opening, plunging the small space into near total darkness. The only light was from a few dying coals in a small fire pit, casting a faint, red glow. The shelter was tiny. They were pressed together, shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. Eli was pushed against the far wall, with Tala on one side of him and Sani on the other. Nalan sat by the entrance, her back to the hide, blocking the wind. The storm raged. It sounded like the world was being torn apart. The wind shrieked like a woman in pain. Sleet hammered the hides. Inside, the silence was heavier than the storm. They sat there for hours. Eli could feel the warmth of Sani's body next to him. She was shivering, not just from cold, but from fear. Tala was a block of rigid hatred beside him, her breathing tight. Eli stared at the red coals. He was a danger to them. He knew it. His presence had broken the fragile peace of their refuge. As soon as the storm passed, he would leave, if they let him. He must have drifted, his mind numb with cold and exhaustion. He was half asleep when he felt a small, tentative touch. He opened his eyes. In the dim red light, Sani was looking at him. Her fear had been replaced by that same deep, sad curiosity. Her hand was hovering near his face. Tala and Naylan were both asleep, or pretending to be. Sani slowly reached out and, with one finger, gently traced the long, white scar that ran from Eli's temple down to his jaw, a mark from a different fight, long ago. Her touch was feather-light, almost not there. It was the first kind human touch he had felt in 3 years. She leaned closer, her voice a tiny whisper, barely audible over the wind. "What made you wander so far?" Eli looked at her. He saw her own loss in her eyes. The ghosts she carried. He saw the ashes of his own cabin, the 2 small graves he had dug on the hill. He answered in a voice just as quiet, a rasp of truth in the dark. "I lost my place." Sani's eyes filled with tears. She did not pull her hand away. She just nodded, as if he had just told her the story of her own life. The storm broke at dawn, leaving the canyon washed clean and cold. The air was sharp, and the wet red rocks of the cliffs seemed to glow in the new light. Naylan was the first one out of the wickiup. She cut Eli's bonds with a single, decisive stroke of her knife. "The storm is past," she said, her voice flat. She did not meet his eyes. "You are free to go." Eli worked his wrists, the rawhide having bitten deep grooves into his skin. He was stiff, sore, and the wound in his side was a dull, throbbing map of pain. He looked at her. "Go where? I have no horse, no rifle. I would be dead in 2 days." "That is not our concern," Tala said from behind him. She had emerged from the shelter, her face dark with mistrust. The carbine was in her hands. "He stays," Sani said. She pushed past Tala, her face pale but set. "He is not strong enough. We cannot send him out to die. It is not our way." "We have no way," Tala's voice was a whip. "Our way is gone, buried under the bones of our children. All we have is this." She gestured to the small, hidden canyon. "And he is a threat to it. He is a white man. He will bring more." Eli stood, his legs unsteady. He looked past them, at the small patch of corn Sani had been tending. The storm had flattened most of it, washing away the carefully dug ditches that channeled water from the spring. He did not argue. He did not beg. He simply walked past them, his body screaming in protest, and knelt by the ruined corn patch. He began to clear the mud from the main irrigation channel with his bare hands. The cold mud felt good on his raw skin. He worked until his head spun and he had to sit back, breathing hard. The women watched him. Sani brought him a piece of dried rabbit and a ladle of water. He ate it, thanked her, and went back to work. He did not try to flee. The decision was not a conscious one. He had nowhere to run to. The bounty hunters were behind him. His old life was a pile of ash. This canyon, this strange prison, was the only place in the world that was not actively trying to kill him. And in it were 3 women whose pain he recognized, because it mirrored his own. Days passed. The sharp cold of the storm settled into a clear, biting winter chill. Eli's wound began to close, the angry red fading to a puckered scar. His strength returned. Slowly, painfully, he kept himself busy, and he kept himself quiet. He helped Sani rebuild the small stone dam at the spring. He used his knife to cut and trim new branches to patch the roof of Sani's wickiup, the one the storm had torn. He never approached the women's lodge, but slept under his rebuilt brush arbor, a respectable distance away. He did not speak unless spoken to. He kept his eyes on his work, or on the ground. He was trying to make himself small, to be a tool, not a man. But they watched him. He was a mystery they could not solve. He was not like the soldiers, loud and demanding. He was not like the agents, full of false smiles and greedy hands. He was quiet. He moved with a strange, broken gentleness. He did not ask for more food. He did not complain about the cold. He simply endured. The fragile tension in the camp began to shift. It was slow, almost invisible, like the movement of the sun across the canyon wall. Sani was the first to uncoil. She began to follow him as he worked, handing him stones for the ditch, or holding a branch steady while he tied it. She would ask him questions in her soft, careful English. "Why is your face sad? Eli Morgan?" "Just my face, Sani." "No, it is in your eyes. Like Nalin's, you see something that is not here." One afternoon, while he was scraping a goat hide, she told him a story about a coyote tricking a rabbit. It was a funny story, and at the end, she made a small, yipping sound, imitating the coyote. The sound was so unexpected, so bright in the heavy silence of the canyon, that a small laugh escaped her. It was a rusty sound, like a hinge that had not been used. She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth, shocked at herself. Eli smiled. It was a small, tight movement of his lips, but it reached his eyes. "That is a good story," he said. After that, Sani's laughter was heard more often. It was a small, healing sound in the harshness of the land. Tala was harder. She was a knot of old rage. She still carried the carbine everywhere. She still watched Eli as if expecting him to pull a knife at any second. But she began to leave the canyon to hunt, something she had not done since he arrived, always staying to watch him. She would leave him alone with Sani for hours. It was a grudging trust, a trust born of necessity. One morning, he woke before dawn to find the water bucket empty. Nalin and Sani were still asleep. Tala was on the high ridge, on watch. He picked up the bucket and walked to the spring. He filled it and carried it back, setting it by the fire pit. When Tala returned, she saw the full bucket. She looked at Eli, who was mending his torn boot. She said nothing, but the next day, she did not stop him when he went to the spring again. She let him fetch the water, a task that took him near the canyon's hidden entrance, a task they had always done themselves. It was a concession, a silent acknowledgement that he had not yet betrayed them. And then there was Nalin. She was the leader, the center of their small, broken world. She was the one who rationed the food, who made the decisions, who held the long memory of their people. She watched Eli with an intensity that unsettled him. It was not just suspicion. It was something deeper, more complex. She was trying to read the story in his face, the one he had told Sani a piece of. She saw the way he moved, the economy of it. He was a man who knew how to handle himself. She saw the way his eyes scanned the canyon rim when he thought no one was looking. He was a man hunted, but she also saw the way he spoke to Sani, his voice gentle. She saw the way he never looked at their bodies, the way he respected their space, a thing no white man of her experience had ever done. One evening, she sat by the fire, sharpening her knife. Eli was on the other side, carving a piece of wood. "You are a cowboy," she said. It was not a question. "I was. But you are not just a cowboy. You know how to fight. That wound on your face, the way you watched Tala's rifle." "I have been in fights," he said, not looking up from the wood. "The men who chased you, the bounty hunters. Why do they want you?" Eli's hand stilled. He stared into the fire. The flames licked at a piece of pine, and the scent filled the air. He thought of the burned cabin, of the smell of smoke and death. He thought of the 2 graves on the hill. "I had a wife," he said. His voice was low, rough. "She was Apache, Chiricahua. Her name was Morning Star, but I called her Anna." Nalin froze. Her knuckles were white on the handle of her knife. "We had a cabin in Texas, near the border. We had a baby girl, 6 months old. We called her Little Bird. We were happy." The word felt strange. like a language he had forgotten. A militia came through. Rangers. They called themselves. They were hunting for any Indian they could find. They said she was a renegade. They said I was a traitor. He stopped. The silence of the canyon rushed in. Sani had crept to the edge of the firelight, listening. Tala was on the ridge, a dark shape against the stars. "They burned the cabin," Eli said, his voice empty. "Anna. They shot her when she ran out. She was holding Little Bird." He closed his eyes. "The baby died in the fire. I was out, checking traps. I came back. I found them." There was a deputy with them, a man named Calloway. He was laughing. He said they had cleaned the stain. "I buried them," Eli whispered. "I buried them on the hill. Then I rode to town. I found Calloway. I killed him in the street. I have been running ever since." No one spoke. Sani was crying, silent tears running down her face. Nayland just stared at him, her face a mask of stone, but her eyes were full of a terrible, shared understanding. She saw his ghosts now, and they looked just like hers. He had lost his place. He had meant his family, his home, his soul. The next day, the tension in the camp had a new name. It was no longer just fear of him. It was a shared grief. But grief was a complicated thing. They had a horse. It was an old, mottled pony that Tala had caught wild, a remnant of a herd scattered by the cavalry. It was half-starved and mean, but it was their only way to haul firewood or hunt farther out. Eli saw Sani trying to gentle it. She would approach it, and it would snarl and snap, its ears flat. "You are doing it wrong," Eli said, walking over. "You are showing it your fear." He took the rope from her. He moved slowly. He did not look the horse in the eye. He spoke to it, a low, meaningless rumble in his chest. He touched its neck, its back, its flank, his hands firm but calm. The horse trembled but stood. "You see, you do not ask it. You tell it, but you tell it quiet." He found an old, worn saddle, likely left by a prospector, that Nayland had hidden in a cave. The leather was stiff. He worked it with goat tallow until it was supple. "This is how you put it on," he said to Sani. He showed her how to lay the blanket, how to place the saddle so it did not pinch, how to tighten the cinch. Sani watched, her eyes wide, absorbing every movement. She was a fast learner. "Now you," he said. Sani, her face set in concentration, saddled the horse. Eli nodded. "Good. What is this?" Tala's voice cut through the air. She strode toward them, her face black with anger. "What are you doing to her?" "I am teaching her the saddle," Eli said. "You are teaching her to be white," Tala yelled. She shoved Sani away from the horse. "You are poisoning her. You want her to be like you. You want her to forget who she is." "Tala, no!" Sani cried. "It is just a saddle." "It is never just a saddle." Tala turned on Eli, her hand grabbing the knife at her belt. "First it is this, then it is your words, then it is your God, then it is your sickness. You come here and you ruin everything. You are a poison." "It is a tool. Tala," Eli said, his voice quiet, holding no anger. "Just a tool, to make work easier." "We have our own tools," she spat. "We do not need yours. We do not need you." She raised the knife. Eli did not move. "Tala." Nayland's voice was not loud, but it cut through Tala's rage like a cold wind. She walked up and stood between them. "He is right," Nayland said. Tala looked at her, betrayed. "Nayland?" "He is right. It is a tool. We need tools to live the old ways. Some of them are gone. We cannot bring them back by being ignorant. We cannot honor our dead by being weak." She looked at the horse, then at Sani. "You will learn the saddle. You will learn to ride, but you will do it as an Apache. You will learn the rifle. You will learn his words. You will take his tools and you will make them ours. That is how we survive." She turned to Tala, her eyes softening. Anger is a shield, my sister, but you cannot hold it forever. It will burn your hands. Tala stared at her, her chest heaving. Then she let out a sound, a sob of pure frustration and grief. She threw her knife into the dust and stalked away, climbing the rocks to be alone. Naylin looked at Eli. You have brought a new pain here, she said. I did not mean to, he said. I know. Eli knew he had broken something. He had to try and mend it. The next day, he was walking by the spring, near the place where the water trickled down from the rocks. He saw something wedged in the mud. He worked it loose. It was a comb, carved from bone. It was old, the teeth worn, but the handle was carved with the shape of a dragonfly. It was Apache work, and it was beautiful. It must have washed down from some old, forgotten camp farther up the mountain. He cleaned it. That evening, he approached Tala. She was sitting by the fire, her back to him, still wrapped in her anger. He held it out to her. I found this by the spring. She turned, her eyes flashing. She saw the comb. She saw the dragonfly, her mother's symbol. She snatched it from his hand, her fingers closing around it. She stared at it, her throat working. She did not cry, but the rigid line of her shoulders softened. She looked at him, her eyes full of 100 conflicting things, hatred, gratitude, sorrow, suspicion. She said nothing. She just turned back to the fire, clutching the comb, but she did not tell him to go away. That night, the cold was deeper. The three women huddled in their wickiup. Eli lay by his own small fire, wrapped in his blanket. He could hear them talking, their voices low and urgent. He could not understand the Apache, but he heard the tone. He heard his own name. He heard the word for man. White man. He heard the desperation. They were talking about the future. The bloodline ends with us, Naylin said, her voice a whisper in the dark. There are no others. The people are gone, scattered, dead. He is not our people, Tala said, her voice hard. But the anger was gone, replaced by a deep weariness. She was holding the comb. He is here, Sani whispered. He is a good man. His heart is broken, like ours. A broken white man is still a white man, Tala argued, but her words had no force. He will leave, or they will find him. And us. What if he does not leave? Naylin asked. What if we do not let him? There was a long, heavy silence. Marry him? Tala's voice was sharp with disbelief. All of us. It is our way. A man can have many wives. It was the way. Naylin's voice was full of doubt. It would keep the bloodline. It would give us a protector, a man to help. It is desperation, Tala said. It is life, Sani whispered. It is a chance. Is it love? Tala asked, the word sounding bitter. Or is it just desperation? We are three women alone. He is one man. He is strong. Is that all this is? I do not know what love is anymore, Naylin said, her voice aching with tiredness. I only know what we have lost and what we have left to lose. He lost a wife. He lost a child. He understands loss. They did not speak of it again, but the question hung in the air of the small wickiup, unanswered. Later that night, Eli was woken by a sound, a small, strangled cry. He sat up. The fire was down to embers. He looked toward the women's lodge. Naylin stumbled out, her hands over her face. She was caught in a nightmare, her eyes wide and unseeing. She was breathing in short, harsh gasps, reliving the day she saw her father and brother hang. No, she whispered. No, please, stop. She sank to her knees by the cold fire pit, her body shaking violently. She was wrapped in a thin blanket, but the cold of the high desert night was cutting through it. Eli moved before he thought. He got up, his own blanket in his hand. He walked to her. She did not see him. She was miles away. years away, trapped in the worst day of her life. He did not touch her. He did not want to frighten her. He just stood over her, a dark shape between her and the wind. He gently draped his own thick wool blanket over her shaking shoulders. He stood there for a long minute, shielding her. Slowly, the shaking subsided. Her breathing calmed. She came back to herself, to the cold canyon, to the smell of ash and pine. She looked up and saw him. His face was unreadable in the dark. He was just there, a solid presence. He had not taken advantage of her fear. He had not touched her. He had simply covered her, protecting her from the cold. There was a long, tense moment. The air between them was electric, a fragile, unspoken thing. It was a moment of pure, sensual vulnerability. She was on her knees, helpless. He was standing over her, powerful, and he had done nothing but offer warmth. She finally pulled the blanket tighter, stood up, and looked at him. Her gaze was no longer just watchful. It was something new, something raw and questioning. She said nothing. She turned and went back into the wickiup. Eli went back to his own bed, but he did not sleep. In the morning, the light was gray and heavy. Naylin came to his fire. She held out his blanket. "Thank you," she said. "You were cold," he replied. They stood there, the silence stretching. "You do not belong here, Eli Morgan," Naylin said, her voice soft. He nodded. "I know. I will leave, as soon as I am strong enough." "That is not what I mean." She looked up at the high canyon walls, the red rock that was their fortress and their prison. "You do not belong here, but neither do we. This is not our land. Our land is gone. We are ghosts, all of us." Before he could answer, there was a sound. A whistle, high and thin. It was Sani, from the sentry post high on the rim. It was the danger signal. "Hide!" Naylin's voice was suddenly iron. "Now!" She pointed to a thicket of brush near the spring. "Get in! Do not move! Do not breathe!" Eli did not question. He scrambled into the brush, his heart pounding. 2 riders appeared at the mouth of the canyon. They wore blue coats, government scouts. They sat on their horses, looking around. Naylin and Tala stood by the fire, their faces impassive. Tala held the carbine, but it was pointed at the ground. "Mornin', ladies," one of the scouts said. He was a thick man with a tobacco-stained beard. "Lost our way. Looking for the reservation trail." "No trail here," Naylin said. The scout looked around. He saw the wickiups, the small corn patch. His eyes lingered on Tala, then on Sani, who had climbed down and was standing behind Naylin. "Just you 3?" he asked, his voice casual. Too casual. "Living out here all alone? Brave of you." "We are not alone," Naylin said. "The spirits of our fathers watch this place." The scout chuckled. "Right." His partner said nothing, just kept scanning the canyon. "Well," the first scout said, "if you see any renegades, you let the soldiers at Fort Grant know. There is a reward." "We see no one," Naylin said. The scouts looked at each other. The first one spat a stream of tobacco juice. "Right, well, we will be on our way." They turned their horses and rode out. Naylin stood without moving until the sound of their horses faded completely. Then she let out a long, slow breath. She walked to the thicket where Eli was hiding. He came out. "They are gone," he said. "They are not gone," Naylin said, her face grim. "They saw. They will be back. Or they will tell someone. They always tell someone." She looked at him, her eyes as hard as the rock around them. "If you brought them here," she said, her voice low and deadly, "if they come back because of you, I will kill you myself." Eli did not sleep that night. He sat by his fire, staring into the flames. He was a danger. He had brought the world to their door. He knew he had to leave, but when he looked at the 3 women, Huddled in their small shelter, he saw the faces of his wife and child. He was trapped. He was a man who had lost his place, and now he had found a new one, a place just as broken as he was. In the darkness, from the other side of the camp, he heard a sound. It was Tala. She was sitting outside her wickiup, the bone comb in her hand, staring up at the moon. She began to sing. It was not one of the songs of work or of stories. It was a mourning song, a high, keening, heartbreaking sound that echoed off the canyon walls. It was a song for her dead child, for her burned village, for her lost people. Eli closed his eyes and listened. The song was his, too. It was the sound of everything he had lost. The first warning was not a sound, but a smell. The sharp, rank odor of fear and blood on the wind. Then came the frantic, high-pitched bleating. "The goats," Naylin breathed, her head snapping up from the corn she was weeding. Eli was already moving. He sprinted to the brush arbor, grabbing his pistol belt and strapping it on. Tala snatched the carbine. They ran to the edge of the canyon floor and looked up toward the small, fenced-in pasture they had built on a high terrace. A pack of wild dogs, gaunt and gray, was swarming the enclosure. They were not coyotes. They were larger, more desperate, dogs abandoned by settlers or soldiers, gone feral and starved. One goat was already down, its throat torn out. The others, 5 ewes and a kid, scrambled in blind panic as the dogs tore at the flimsy branch fence. "We will lose them all," Sani cried, her hands at her mouth. "The rifle is too slow," Eli said, his voice flat and hard. "The range is too long for my pistol. I need the horse." Tala looked at the carbine, then at Eli. She knew he was right. She could not possibly kill them all from here before they scattered the herd. She thrust the rifle at him. "You go. You are faster." It was the first time she had offered him the gun. He did not have time to register it. He grabbed it, checked the load, and ran for the pony. "I am coming," Sani yelled, running after him. "No, stay here," Eli commanded. "I know the fast path up the rocks. You will be too late without me," she insisted, already scrambling up the goat path. There was no time to argue. Eli swung onto the pony's bare back, the carbine in one hand, and kicked it into a desperate run. He followed Sani's bright-colored skirt as she bounded up the trail, a path he never would have found. They reached the terrace in a cloud of dust. The dogs, frenzied by the kill, turned on the new threat. 3 of them, their muzzles dark with blood, charged him. Eli did not hesitate. He was no longer the quiet, broken man. He was the man who had survived 3 years of running. He fired the carbine from his hip. The first shot caught the lead dog in the chest. The second took the next one in the throat. He kicked the horse forward, swinging the carbine like a club, cracking the skull of the third. Sani screamed as 2 more dogs broke from the goat pen and lunged at her. Eli threw himself from the pony, rolling, bringing his pistol clear. He fired. The shot was deafening. The first dog dropped. He fired again. The second dog yelped, its back legs shattering, and scrambled away into the rocks. The rest of the pack, seeing their leaders dead, turned and fled, vanishing into the canyons. Silence fell, broken only by the whimpering of the wounded dog and the terrified bleating of the goats. Eli stood, breathing hard, smoke curling from the barrel of his pistol. He walked to the wounded dog, raised the pistol, and fired a final, merciful shot. He turned. Sani was pressed against the rock wall, her eyes wide, her chest heaving. She was staring at him, at the blood on his hands, at the smoking gun, at the hard, cold competence in his face. She had seen him as a victim, as a gentle helper. Now she had seen him as a killer. He walked to her, his face softening, the hardness fading. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. He holstered his pistol and reached a hand out to her. She took it, her fingers like ice. He gently pulled her away from the rock. "It is over," he said, his voice quiet again. She did not let go of his hand. When they went to check the goats, she walked so close her shoulder brushed his arm. They had lost one, but the other 5 were safe, huddled in the corner. Eli resaddled the pony. He mounted, then reached down for Sani. "Come on, it is a long walk down." She hesitated for only a second. Then she took his hand and let him pull her up, seating her in front of him. She was small, and he could feel her trembling. He held the reins, his arms around her, holding her secure. The ride down was slow. Sani did not speak. She just leaned back against his chest, her head resting just below his chin. She was clinging to him, not in fear of falling, but in a way that was new, a way that was possessive. She was breathing in the scent of him, sweat, gunpowder, and dust. She had seen him defend their home, their food, her, and it had awakened something in her that was vast and sudden. When they reached the canyon floor, Nalin and Tala were waiting. Tala's eyes immediately went to Sani, to the way she was cradled against Eli, to the way she was holding his arm. Sani slid down from the horse, but she did not move away from him. Her eyes were bright, fixed on Eli's face with a new, burning emotion. Tala watched it all, and her face, already hard, grew colder. She felt a sharp, ugly sting. It was not just suspicion, it was jealousy, a jealousy that cut her to the bone. She was not jealous of Eli, but of Sani. She was jealous of Sani's innocence, of her ability to feel this simple, bright adoration, this hope. Tala's own heart was a stone, drowned in the memory of her dead child, and she hated seeing Sani's heart take flight. She looked at Eli, and her hatred deepened, because he was the one making it fly. Nalin, however, saw something different. She saw a protector. She saw a man who had not hesitated to kill for them. In the days that followed, the change in the camp was clear. Sani was always near Eli, bringing him water, asking him to teach her more English, mending his shirt, and Nalin began to trust him with their deepest words. She sat with him by the fire one evening, grinding corn. She said, holding up a single, perfect kernel. "It means a life." Eli repeated the word. It felt strange on his tongue. "Hagos," she said, beckoning him closer to the fire. "Come." He learned words for water, for rock, for fire, for sky. They were simple, but they felt heavy, like stones worn smooth in a river. Then she began to speak of the land. She pointed to a dry, cracked wash at the far end of the canyon. "That was once Talo Diskid," she said. "River of the tall grass. My grandfather told me. He would bring ponies here to drink. Now, nothing. The grass is gone. The river is gone." She spoke of the mountains, naming peaks that had been renamed by white mapmakers. She spoke of sacred places, of springs that had vanished, of hunting grounds now covered by towns he had ridden through. She was not just teaching him a language. She was showing him the ghost of her world, the one that lived under the surface of the one he knew. He listened. He spoke of his own losses, not of the fight, but of the land. He told her about the creek behind his cabin in Texas, how his wife Anna had planted mint along its banks, how the water had run clear and cold. He told her how, when he had gone back, it had been choked with mud from a cattle baron's herd. They were speaking of death, but they were speaking of life, too, of the memory of things. In their shared loss, they found a strange, quiet understanding. Eli felt a part of him that had been frozen for 3 years begin to ache, like a limb regaining feeling. The winter deepened. One of the ewes, heavy with child, went into labor. Tala and Nalin worked all night, but the birth was wrong. The ewe survived, but the lamb was born still, its small, perfect body lifeless. Tala knelt over it, her face a mask. She did not cry. She just stared at the small, wet form. We will bury it, Nayland said softly, touching her shoulder. Tala shook her head. She stayed there, unmoving, as the sun rose. Eli found a spot near the spring, under a small, twisted juniper. He took the shovel they used for the irrigation ditches and began to dig. He did not ask. He just did it. He dug a small, neat hole in the hard-packed earth. When he was done, he went to Tala. She was still kneeling by the lamb. "It is ready," he said. She looked up at him, her eyes hollow. She picked up the lamb, wrapped in a piece of scrap cloth, and followed him. She placed the lamb in the hole. Eli began to push the dirt back in. "Stop," she whispered. He stopped, his shovel halfway to the hole. She knelt and, with her bare hands, began to push the dirt over the lamb. She was careful, gentle, as if tucking it into a bed. When it was covered, she placed a small, flat stone on the mound. And then she broke. It was not a loud grief. It was a silent, terrible collapse. Her shoulders hunched, and a sound was torn from her, a low, animal sound of pure agony. "It was my fault," she whispered, her hands clawing at the dirt. Eli knelt beside her. He did not touch her. He just waited. "My baby," she choked out. "My boy, the soldiers came. At dawn, I ran for the river." She was seeing it again, her eyes fixed on the small grave, but seeing something else. "He was crying. He was so loud. I tried to make him quiet. I held him so tight. A bullet. It came. It went right through my arm." She clutched her left arm, where a long, puckered scar disappeared under her sleeve. "And into him. It killed him. In my arms." Her voice was raw with self-hatred. "I was too slow. I should have hidden him. I should have been quieter. I killed him. I killed my own son." She turned to Eli, her face wet, her eyes blazing with a grief that was indistinguishable from madness. "I hate them. I hate them all. Every soldier, every white man. I hate their breath. I hate their voices." Her gaze bored into him, accusing him, judging him, condemning him. "I hate you." Eli did not flinch. He did not defend himself. He just met her gaze, his own face full of the ghosts he carried. "I know," he said. His acceptance was worse than an argument. It took the fight out of her. She slumped, her grief complete, and wept, her forehead pressed to the new grave. Eli stayed with her until the sun was high, a silent guardian of her sorrow. That night, the air was brittle with cold. Eli sat by his fire, unable to sleep. Tala's confession had ripped open his own wounds. He was staring into the flames, seeing Anna's face. He heard a sound. Tala was standing at the edge of the light. She was wrapped in her blanket, her face pale, her eyes haunted. She did not speak. She just walked to his fire and sat down, huddling in her blanket. They sat in silence for a long time. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the distant cry of a wolf. He could feel the cold coming off her. Or maybe it was the grief. Without thinking, he lifted a corner of his own thick wool blanket and held it out, an offering. She looked at the blanket, then at him. Slowly, she shifted, moving closer, and let him drape it over her. Sharing his warmth, they sat shoulder to shoulder. He could feel her shivering. He could smell the wood smoke in her hair and the salt of her dried tears. The tension was a living thing, sharp as glass. It was not desire, not in the simple sense. It was a desperate, raw connection between two people who were drowning in the same dark water. He was a man. She was a woman. They were both broken. He could feel the warmth of her leg pressed against his, the soft brush of her breath on his neck. She turned her head, her face inches from his. Her eyes searched his, looking for something. Pity, weakness, absolution. He did not move. He just looked back at all the pain in her. A long, shuddering breath escaped her. She leaned in, just a fraction. Her lips parting. He felt his own body respond. A deep, primal ache. Then, just as suddenly as she had come, she recoiled. She tore the blanket off and scrambled back, her face twisting. "No," she hissed, her voice full of self-loathing. "I don't want your mercy." She looked at him as if he had tried to poison her, as if his kindness, his shared warmth, was the ultimate insult. She grabbed her own blanket and fled to the darkness of her wickiup, leaving him alone by the fire, the cold rushing into the space where she had been. While Tala fought her demons in the dark, Sani was nurturing her own fragile hope. In the days after the dog attack, she had begun a secret project. She had found a perfect, smooth piece of willow, and she had begun to carve it, just as she had seen the holy men do. She was making a prayer stick. She worked on it in secret. When Nayland and Tala were hunting or foraging, she painted it with dyes made from berries and colored clay. She painted the symbol for a mountain, for a horse, and for a protector. And then, in the center, in shaky, blocky English letters, she painted his name, E.L.I. She did not fully understand the sacredness of what she was doing, only that her feelings for him were so large and new that they needed a place to live. She hid the stick under her sleeping mat, a secret talisman against the loneliness of the canyon. The cold finally broke, and the moon of the new harvest arrived. It was a time their people had always celebrated. Nayland declared they would honor it. "We have little," she said, "but we have this. We have life. We will thank the spirits for it." They made a special meal. They roasted the last of the corn, and Nalan and Tala sang. They were old songs, songs of gratitude and strength. Sani brought out a small drum, one her mother had given her, and beat a soft, steady rhythm. Then Nalan began to dance. It was a simple, shuffling step, a dance of planting and growing. She pulled Sani up, and Sani danced, too, her movements young and fluid. Even Tala joined, her face still sad, but her body moving to the ancient rhythm. They were, for a moment, not 3 broken survivors, but 3 Apache women, whole and alive. Eli watched from the shadows, feeling like an intruder. "Hagos," Nayland called to him, beckoning him. "Come." He shook his head. "I do not know how—" "It does not matter," Sani said, laughing. She ran to him and grabbed his hand, pulling him into the firelight. "You just move." He was awkward. His boots were heavy, his body stiff. He tried to follow their steps, shuffling his feet, feeling foolish. But Sani laughed, a pure, bright sound. And Nalan smiled, a true, warm smile that changed her whole face. Even Tala watched him, a tiny, almost imperceptible softening at the corner of her mouth. He was a part of it. He was a broken man, dancing awkwardly with 3 broken women. And for the first time in 3 years, Eli Morgan felt a flicker of something he had thought was dead forever. He felt a moment of joy. The moment shattered. A single, sharp whistle cut through the night. It was Tala. She had stopped dancing, her head cocked, listening. The drum stopped. The singing died. "What?" Eli asked. "A rider," Nayland whispered, her smile vanishing, her face becoming a mask of fear. "Down the main canyon, moving slow." They doused the fire, plunging the camp into darkness. Nalan grabbed the carbine. They climbed to the high ledge, hiding in the rocks, and peered down. A lone horseman was picking his way through the moonlight. He was Apache. He wore the blue pants of a soldier and the red bandana of a scout. He stopped his horse, looking around, his gaze sweeping the canyon walls. He was too far away to see their hidden camp, but he was looking. He was searching. Nayland's breath caught in her throat. "I know him," she whispered, her voice tight with panic. "He is called Besh, Iron. He rides for the soldiers at Fort Grant. He is a metal eye, a scout." The man sat on his horse for a long time. Then, slowly, He turned and rode back the way he came. They stayed on the ledge until he was long gone. They climbed down, but the joy was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. "The scouts," Eli said. "The ones who came before. They told him." "They told someone," Nayland said. "And that someone sent him. He was not patrolling. He was hunting." That night, there was no pretense of sleep. They sat around the dead coals, the carbine and Eli's pistol between them. "You have to know," Nayland said, her voice low, her eyes on the darkness where the scout had been. "Know what?" Eli asked. "Why we are here. It is not just the soldiers, not just the massacres." She took a deep breath. "We were promised." Eli looked at her, uncomprehending. "Before my father was killed," Nayland said, "he was forced into an agreement to make peace with a powerful clan, one that was working with the agents. I was promised to their leader, a hard man, a man who already had 2 wives. And Tala," she went on. "After her village was burned, she was taken by a band of renegades. Their leader wanted her. He said he would claim her. She escaped from him. Sani, she was promised by her uncle, before he died, to an old man, a traitor, in exchange for food." Eli felt a cold sickness in his stomach. This was not just flight. This was escape. They were fugitives, hunted not just by the law, but by men who saw them as property. "They are powerful men," Nayland said, her voice trembling. "They have money. They have scouts. They have the ear of the agents who came here, the scouts. They were not looking for renegades. They were looking for us, to return us." Eli finally understood. His presence, the presence of a white outlaw, in this hidden camp with 3 escaped native women, was a death sentence for all of them. He had not brought the danger, but he had made it infinitely worse. He stood up. "I will leave," he said. "At dawn, I will take the pony. I will ride south. I will draw them off. They are hunting me, too. They will follow me." It was the only thing he could do, the only way to save them. Nayland looked up at him, her face full of a terrible, bleak certainty. She shook her head, a small, slow movement. "No," she whispered. "You do not understand. They do not care about you. They care about us." She rose and stood before him, her eyes pleading with him to see the truth. "They will find us whether you stay or go." The dawn broke gray and bitter. The dread from the scouts' visit lay over the small camp like a shroud. Eli Morgan had not slept. He had made his decision. He was poison to these women, a beacon for the darkness they were fleeing. He would not be the one to bring it down on them. He was checking the cinch on the old mottled pony, his movement stiff from the cold. When Sani appeared at his elbow, her face was pale, her eyes huge and dark in the thin light. "You are leaving," she whispered. It was not a question. "I have to, Sani. Nayland is right. I will draw them off. It is the only way." He did not look at her. He could not. "No." Her voice was small, but fierce. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "You are wrong. Nayland is wrong. If you go, they will find us. We will be alone. They will take us. If you stay, we can fight. I saw you, with the dogs. You know how to fight." "Sani, this is not dogs. These are men, armed men. I am just one man." "You are not," she said, her voice trembling. "You are here, with us. Do not leave us. Please." She was desperate. He could see the terror of her old loneliness in her, the fear of being abandoned again, of watching everyone she cared for vanish. "I cannot protect you," he said, his voice rough. "I bring nothing but trouble." "You are lying," she whispered. She reached up, her small, cold hand touching the scar on his jaw, the one she had touched in the storm. "You are a good man. Your heart is broken. I see it." "Sani, do not," he said, his throat tight. He tried to step away. Stay, she pleaded. Stay with me. And then she did what he had not expected. She rose on her toes, grabbed the front of his rough wool shirt with both hands, and pulled his face down to hers. She kissed him. It was not a child's kiss. The outline said her innocence trembled, but it was not childish. And that was the truest thing. It was a kiss of pure, desperate, adult need. It was the kiss of a woman who had seen nothing but death and was now clinging to the first sign of life. Her lips were cold, chapped, but they were desperate. She was offering him the only thing she had. She was trying to bind him to her, to this place, with her own body. He resisted for a second. His hands came up to grip her shoulders, to push her away. This was wrong. She was a child in his eyes, a girl who had lost everything. He was a broken man, old enough to be her father, his heart buried in Texas with Anna and Little Bird. But as he tried to push her away, she made a small, broken sound, a sob against his mouth. That sound shattered him. The 3 years of running, of sleeping cold, of having no one, of a body starved of all human touch, it all broke surface. The passion that overtook him was not just for her. It was for life. It was a drowning man's gasp for air. He dropped his hands from her shoulders and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her tight against him. He kissed her back, a kiss that was as desperate as hers, but harder, full of a hunger and a grief that he had kept buried for 1,000 nights. He held her as if she was an anchor, the first solid thing he had touched in years, and he was lost in her. Sanny. The voice was not loud. It was as sharp and cold as a shard of obsidian. Eli and Sanny tore themselves apart. Naylin was standing 10 feet away, by the entrance to her wickiup. She held a basket of dried roots. Her face was a mask. She said nothing else. She just looked at them. She looked at Eli, his hand still on her sister. She looked at Sanny, her lips swollen, her eyes wide with fear and shame. Naylin's silence was a condemnation louder than any scream. She held Eli's gaze for a long, terrible moment. Then she turned, dropped the basket, and walked away, disappearing up the path toward the spring. Eli felt sick. He gently unwrapped Sanny's arms from his neck. She would not look at him, her face burning. She turned and fled to her own wickiup, hiding herself in the dark. Eli stood alone, the taste of her kiss on his mouth, feeling lower than he had ever felt. He found Naylin an hour later. She was not at the spring. She was on the high ledge, the sentry post, sitting with the carbine across her lap, staring out at the empty land. She did not look at him as he approached. "Nalin," he started, his voice a rasp. "About Sanny, I would never." "You already did." Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Do you think this is a game, like the ones your men play in town? You think you can pick the one you want, the young one?" "No, it was not like that. She was afraid. She asked me to stay. And you stayed, with your mouth." Naylin turned to him, and her eyes were not jealous. The outline was right. It was fear, a deep, cold, pragmatic fear. "You are a white man," she said, her voice low. "You think one man, one woman, you think you can take, and then you can leave. You think you can have her, and Tala and I will just watch, like servants." "That is not what I think. It is what you do." She stood up, her anger finally showing. "You do not understand the thing you have done. You have shamed her. You have shamed us. You have broken the only thing we had left, the balance between us. Now she is yours. And what are we? Her keepers? Or are we just the other two?" He had no answer. He had broken their fragile world. "In the old way," Naylin said, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "A man who takes a woman from a family like this, he becomes part of the family. He's responsible. He does not just take one. He takes all." She stepped closer to him, her eyes boring into his. "You do not get to choose. You do not get to play us against each other. You have made your move, Eli Morgan. Now you must live with it. If you give your body to one of us, you belong to all." Eli felt like he had been struck. He was a prisoner, not of rawhide, but of a custom he could not comprehend, a custom born of a brutal, desperate world. He did not know that Tala had been on the path below, coming to relieve Nalin of the watch. He did not know she had heard Nalin's final words, the ones that sealed their fate. "You belong to all." Tala stopped, the words hitting her like a physical blow. It was done. This man, this white poison, had won. He had used Sani's innocence to buy his way into their family. Nalin was accepting it. They were trapped. She, Tala, who had lost her son to a white man's bullet, was now to be given to one as a wife. A black, bitter rage filled her. It was not at Eli. It was not at Nalin. It was at the world, at the spirits, at the land itself, for betraying her. She turned and stalked back to the camp. She went straight to Sani's wickiup. Sani was inside, huddled on her sleeping mat, crying. "Where is it?" Tala demanded. "What?" Sani looked up, her face tear-streaked. "The thing you made for him, the little painted stick, the lie." Tala tore the small shelter apart. She ripped up the sleeping mats, threw aside the blankets. She found it, hidden beneath a loose stone. Sani's prayer stick, with his name, E-L-I. "No!" Sani screamed, scrambling for it. Tala shoved her back. She walked out to the central fire pit, where the coals still glowed. "It is a lie, little sister!" Tala hissed, her face a mask of grief and fury. "There is no protection. There is no hope. There are only men who take, and women who are fools." She threw the painted stick into the fire. Sani let out a wail of pure anguish and tried to reach for it, but the flames licked up, catching the dry willow. The paint blistered. The name blackened and disappeared. "You burned it," Sani wept, falling to her knees. "You burned my prayer." "Yes," Tala cried, her arms spread wide, her face turned to the sky. "I curse this land. I curse the day you were born. White man," she screamed at Eli, who had just come down from the ledge. "I curse this trap. We are all dead. We are all dead, and this is our hell." She collapsed, sobbing, over the fire that had consumed Sani's hope. The four of them were a shattered, hateful silence, frozen in their separate miseries. The attack came that night. The weather had turned, the wind rising, spitting sharp, icy pellets of snow. A blizzard was moving in. They were huddled in their separate shelters, lost in their anger. When the sound came, a man's sharp command in Apache, from the canyon entrance. "They are here," Nalin whispered, her voice dead. Eli grabbed his pistol. Nalin snatched the carbine. They peered out. 3 men, the scout, Besh, was in the lead, a rifle in his hand. With him were 2 others. One was a broad, older man with a flat, cruel face and small, piggy eyes. He was dressed in a mix of military scraps and Apache leather. The other was scarred, leaner, his eyes burning with a wild, possessive light. They were armed with rifles, pistols, and knives. They were loud, arrogant, and hateful. "We are here for what is ours. Nalin," the older one boomed, his voice carrying over the rising wind. "Your father promised you to me, and the renegade Chaco," he gestured to the scarred man, "has come to collect his runaway." Chaco grinned, his eyes fixed on Tala, who stood beside Nalin, her face ashen. "You were hard to find, little rabbit. You will be punished for the run." Besh, the scout, saw Eli. His eyes narrowed. "And a white man. You have been busy. The agent will pay well for him, and for the girl." The traitor was very unhappy she ran. "This was it, the end of the line." "They are not yours," Eli said, stepping out. His hand was on his pistol. "Get out of this place." The man Chaco laughed. The white man speaks for them now? Eli did not wait. He drew his pistol. He was 1 against 3. He fired at Besh, the scout, the most dangerous. The shot was wild. The wind and the darkness betrayed him. It only grazed the scout's shoulder. Before Eli could fire again, the older man leveled his rifle and fired. It was not a bullet. It was a heavy thud. The butt of Besh's rifle slammed into the side of Eli's head. He had moved like a snake. Eli collapsed, the world exploding in white pain. He felt them on him, kicking him, tearing the pistol from his hand. He heard Sani scream. He felt the sharp bite of rawhide as they tied his wrists, pulling them tight, dislocating his shoulder with a vicious jerk. He was dragged to the central post and tied there, left bleeding in the snow, which was now falling thick and fast. "You will watch, white man." The older man sneered. "You will watch as we take what belongs to us. Then, in the morning, we take you to the agent. We will wait out the storm. We have time." He and Chaco laughed and shoved the 3 women toward the main wickiup. Besh, the scout, clutching his bleeding shoulder, stayed outside, standing guard over Eli. Eli's head was splitting. The snow was a white, blinding curtain. He was going to die here. He was going to watch them be taken, and he was going to freeze to death tied to a post. He saw Sani's face as she was pushed into the lodge. He saw Nalen's, cold with despair. He saw Tala's. Her face was ice, but her eyes were not defeated. They were pure, black, calculating hate. An hour passed. The blizzard was a screaming wall of white. Eli was numb, his blood freezing on his face. He could barely see Besh, who was huddled under the brush arbor, trying to light a fire. Then a shape moved in the white. It was Tala. She had slipped out of the wickiup. The men were drinking, celebrating, their guard down. She moved like a shadow. She was not coming to Eli. She was stalking Besh. The scout heard her at the last second. He turned, raising his rifle. But Tala was too fast. She had her skinning knife. She lunged, not at his chest, but at his throat, a low, slicing motion. He made a wet, gagging sound and fell forward into the snow, his rifle clattering. Tala was on Eli in a second. She did not speak. She sawed at his bonds with the bloody knife. "Can you fight?" she hissed, her breath a cloud in the storm. He nodded, his body screaming in pain as he forced himself to his feet. "They will not take us," she said. She handed him the scout's pistol. "They will not. I will die here first, and you will die with me." He did not answer. He just took the pistol. The flap of the wickiup tore open. The scarred man, Chaco, stepped out, yelling into the wind. "Besh, where are you?" He saw the dark shape on the ground. He saw Eli, free. He raised his rifle. Eli fired. The shot was muffled by the wind. Chaco grunted, hit in the chest, but he was still standing. He fired back. The bullet tore a chunk of bark from the post beside Eli's head. Tala screamed, a wild, inhuman battle cry, and charged him. She threw herself at him, her knife flashing. It was her fight, the man who had hunted her, the man who had killed her son. She was a whirlwind of pure, unadulterated rage. Chaco clubbed at her with his rifle, but she was inside his guard. She stabbed him once, twice, 3 times, in the gut, in the chest. He fell to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. Tala stood over him, her arm rising and falling, again and again, long after he was dead, her cries lost in the wind. The last man, the older one, burst from the wickiup. He saw his 2 companions dead. He saw Eli, armed, and Tala, covered in blood. He was a coward. He did not raise his rifle. He turned and ran, scrambling for the horses, which were huddled against the canyon wall. Eli raised his pistol to shoot him in the back. No. Nalen was there, holding Sani behind her. "Let him go. Let him run. The storm will have him, or he will tell the others that this place is death." Eli lowered the gun. They watched the man disappear into the screaming white. They were alone. The blizzard raged around them, covering the two bodies, covering the blood. Sani ran to Eli, throwing her arms around him, sobbing. Tala stood over the man she had killed, her chest heaving, her knife dripping. She looked at Eli. The hatred was gone. In its place was a fierce, terrible, and profound respect. They brought Eli into the wickiup. The storm outside was a monster, but inside, the small space was a sanctuary. He was bleeding from the head, his shoulder was out of its socket, and he was half frozen. The women tended to him, but this time, it was different. Their touch was not just careful, it was soft, it was reverent. He was no longer a prisoner, no longer an outsider. He had bled for them. He had killed for them. Sani, her face stained with tears, gently washed the blood from his head with a warm cloth. Her touch was innocent, but no longer childish. Tala, her hands still faintly stained, took a deep breath and with a brutal, efficient motion, jammed his shoulder back into its socket. He cried out, and she gently, gently bound his arm to his chest. Her touch was a promise of fierce protection. Nylan held a cup of hot, herb-laced water to his lips. Her eyes met his over the rim of the cup. The words she had spoken that morning, "You belong to all," were no longer a threat. They were a statement of fact. They sat around the small, low fire for days. While the blizzard sealed them in, they buried the bodies when the snow stopped, rolling them in blankets and putting them deep under the rock slide. The canyon felt clean again, purified. That night, they sat by the fire, the four of them. The silence was deep, but it was no longer angry. Nalin spoke, her voice soft. 3 broken women, she said, looking at Sani, then at Tala, then at herself. 1 broken man. She looked at Eli. We need something to believe in. The world outside, their law, their men, it is all meant to destroy us. We must make our own. She stood and went to a small pouch. She pulled out 4 small, smooth stones she had gathered from the vanished river. In the old days, she said, when our people joined, there was no paper, there was no agent. There was just this, the land, the spirits, the family. She handed 1 stone to Sani, 1 to Tala, and 1 to Eli. She kept 1 for herself. We are a new people, she said, a new tribe of 4. They walked, all of them, to the place near the spring where Eli had buried the lamb. They placed the 4 stones together on the small grave, a monument to their shared loss. And their new beginning, no papers, no law, but something sacred. That night, in the wickiup, the 4 of them came together. It was not a savage act. It was intimate, quiet, and vulnerable. There were no words. None were needed. He lay by the fire, his body aching, but his heart, for the first time, quiet. Sani came to him first. She lay down beside him, her small body fitting against his, her touch a silent question. He put his good arm around her. It was a promise of a new beginning. Tala lay down on his other side, her back to him, but she reached back, her hand finding his. She gripped it, her fingers strong. It was a promise of forgiveness and of unbending strength. Naylin was the last. She lay facing him, her eyes meeting his in the dim firelight. She covered them all with the thickest blankets, her arm draping over him, over Sani. It was a seal, a promise of family. He had come to this canyon seeking only a place to sleep, a place to die. Instead, surrounded by these 3 women, their breath fogging in the cold air, their warmth sealing him, he had found a place to live. The snows of the great blizzard melted, and the canyon floor scoured and washed clean, turned a tender, hopeful green. Spring came not as a gentle guest, but as a sudden, desperate rush of life. The spring, swollen with melted snow, ran fast and cold. The patch of corn Sani had mourned was replanted, this time with Eli's help. The rows straighter, the irrigation ditches deeper and more efficient. The four of them settled into a new kind of harmony. It was not the fragile, tense truce of their first weeks, but something solid, forged in the blizzard and the blood they had spilled together. The death of the men who had come to claim them had not been an end, but a beginning. It had been a baptism. Their lives, once separate streams of grief, had merged. They were a family. Eli, his head healed and his shoulder mended, was no longer a prisoner. He was the center of their small world, a post driven deep into the rock. He hunted, but no longer alone. Tala went with him. They moved through the high country as a silent, lethal team. She with her knife and snares, he with the scout's pistol he now wore as his own, and the carbine, which they shared. They would return with rabbits, and sometimes a deer, and Eli would help her skin them, their hands working together in a bloody, practiced rhythm. Sani, her adoration for Eli now a steady, glowing warmth rather than a desperate spark, tended the new garden. She planted beans and squash seeds she had found in a clay pot, seeds her grandmother had hidden. She sang as she worked, and she brought Eli the first sweet shoots of the corn, her face bright with pride. Naylin was the heart. She was the one who kept the peace, who allocated the food, who saw the future. She and Eli worked to build a new shelter. The 3 wickiups were small, cold. Eli had seen the way the agent's cabin in Texas had been built, and he knew how to stack stone. Together, he and Naylin began to build a small, solid house against the canyon wall, using mud for mortar and the felled timber of a long dead pine. It was slow, back-breaking work, but it was a declaration. They were not hiding anymore. They were building a home. The intimacy that had been born in the storm changed, too. It became a thing of simple, daily domesticity. There was no shame. Eli slept by the fire in the new, half-finished structure. Sani would often fall asleep near him, her head on his good shoulder. Tala would sit with him late, the two of them sharpening their knives, the silence comfortable. Naylin would bring him his food, her hand lingering on his as she gave him the bowl. A quiet, possessive touch that acknowledged all they had shared. He was their husband, and they were his wives. It was a fact, as solid as the stones he was stacking. But Eli Morgan was still a man who had been running for 3 years. He had not forgotten the world outside the canyon. He had not forgotten the man who had fled. Peace made him nervous. He would find himself watching the high canyon rim, waiting for the glint of a rifle barrel. The harmony felt real, but he knew how fragile it was. He knew that the world was full of men with warrants and laws designed to tear such things apart. One morning, he felt it, a cold itch between his shoulder blades. The air was too still. The silence felt watchful. "I am going to check the high traps," he told Naylin. It was a lie. "Be safe," she said, her eyes meeting his. She knew it was a lie, but she also knew he needed to go. He took the pony and the carbine. He did not ride south, toward the traps. He rode north, to the mouth of the main canyon, the path the agents had taken. He dismounted before he reached the entrance, tying the pony in a grove of juniper, and went the rest of the way on foot, moving like a shadow. He lay on a flat rock, peering down at the main trail, the one that led back to the fort, back to the world. He saw them almost immediately. He had been right. They were tracks, not the hurried, frantic tracks of the man who had fled in the blizzard. These were fresh, deep, and orderly. Wagon wheels, 2 wagons, and alongside them, the clear, sharp prints of military-issued boots. A lot of them. A patrol. They had passed by only hours ago. Heading west, they had not stopped. They had not turned into his canyon, but they were here. The man who fled had talked. The agent and the scouts who had come before had talked. Their secret was a secret no longer. The army was in his valley. His blood ran cold. They were not hunting him, not yet. They were just there, a presence, a warning. He scrambled back, his mind racing. He had to get back. He had to tell them. They had to be ready. While Eli was staring at the tracks that marked the end of their peace, Tala and Nayland were at the spring, washing the blankets they had used all winter. It was the first time they had been truly alone in weeks. Tala was scrubbing a wool blanket against a smooth rock, her movements hard, aggressive. Nayland watched her. Tala's anger, which had once been a consuming fire, had banked to a low, protective coal. But Nayland could see the smoke. "You are thinking of them," Nayland said quietly. "The men they had killed." Tala stopped scrubbing. She looked at her hands, submerged in the cold water. "I am thinking of him. The one I killed. Chaco. He is gone. Tala, you are free of him." "Am I?" Tala said, her voice low. "I feel his hate. Still, I killed him, and it did not make me clean." She looked up, her eyes dark with a shame Nayland had never seen before. "Nalin, I have to tell you, I almost betrayed us." Nalin stopped her work, her face still. "What do you mean?" "Before, when Eli first came, before the storm, I was weak." The confession was torn from her, the words tasting like ash. "I was going to leave. I was going to walk to the fort." "To run away?" "No," Tala whispered, and the shame on her face deepened. "To trade. I was going to tell them where this place was. I was going to tell them they could find Chaco here. I thought if I gave them him, and maybe the white man, they would give me supplies. Food. Blankets for the winter. For me. For Sani. I thought it was the only way to save her." Nayland stared at her, her heart cold. Betrayal. It was the one thing she had never expected. "But I could not," Tala said, the words rushing out. "I went to the ridge. I was going to go, but I thought of my baby. I thought of how the soldiers, they are all the same. They lie. They would have taken us anyway. They would have given us to those men and laughed." She looked at Nalin, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. "And then he fought for us, for Sani, when the dogs came. And he was broken, like us. I could not do it. I would never," she said, her voice fierce. "Not now. This is my home. You are my sisters. He is my husband. I will die here before I let them touch any of you." Nayland looked at her sister, at the terrible, desperate choice she had almost made. She saw not a traitor, but a woman pushed to the very edge of her soul. She reached out and put her wet hand on Tala's shoulder. "He is our husband," Nayland corrected gently. "And you are our sister. The past is ash. We are alive. That is all." Tala's shoulders slumped in relief. The last secret was gone. The family was whole, their bond absolute. Eli rode the pony hard. Scrambling back into the hidden canyon, he burst into the clearing where the women were hanging the blankets. "They are here," he panted, swinging down from the horse. "Soldiers, a whole patrol, with wagons, on the main trail. They did not see us, but they are here." Nalin and Tala exchanged a look. Their new, perfect bond was to be tested. "What do we do?" Sani asked, her voice small, her hand flying to her mouth. "We have to be ready to run," Eli said. "Pack the food. Hide the water skins. We can go high, into the rocks." He was interrupted by a voice, a loud, booming, white man's voice. "Eli Morgan!" They froze. At the canyon entrance, blocking the only way out, were 6 men. 2 of them were in dark suits, their face pale and soft. City men. Behind them were 4 cavalry soldiers, their blue coats bright against the red rock, their rifles held at the ready. They were not the same soldiers from before. These looked harder, older. One, a sergeant with a thick mustache, looked bored. "Eli Morgan," the first man said again. He was a thick man with a graying beard, and he was holding a piece of paper. I am Agent Harris, from the San Carlos agency. You are under arrest for the murder of Deputy Calloway in Texas. Eli stepped in front of the women. His hand was on the scout's pistol. And the agent continued, his eyes sliding past Eli to the three women. You are under further arrest for the kidnapping of these three native women, wards of the United States government. They are not wards, Eli said, his voice low and dangerous. They are, the agent said, unrolling the paper. I have warrants for their return. Nayland of the White Mesa clan, promised to the family of the Redstone Scout, Besh as recompense for his murder, Sani indentured to Mr. Silas Tibbins of Tucson, and Tala, an escaped hostile from the San Carlos reservation. They had turned the women's survival into a list of crimes. The man who had fled the blizzard had told them everything. He had told them who had died. They are not going anywhere, Eli said. Son, the sergeant with the mustache said, his voice a weary drawl. There are 6 of us. There is 1 of you. Your pistol is old. Our rifles are new. Do not make this a bad day. Eli looked at the women. His heart was a block of ice. He had brought this, his presence, his past. It had all followed him. Run, he whispered to Nayland, not taking his eyes off the agent. Take them. Go high. The path Sani showed me. Go now. I will hold them. Sani grabbed his arm. No, Eli, no! Tala drew her long skinning knife. Her feet were planted. We do not run, she said. Nayland stepped forward. She did not have her bow. It was in the lodge. She was standing beside Eli, her hands empty, but her spine made of iron. We are not wards, she said, her English clear and cold. We are not property. We are free women, on our own land. Tala stepped forward, on Eli's other side. This is our home. This is our family. We do not recognize your paper. Sani, her fear eclipsed by a sudden, surging rage, stepped up to stand with them. He is our husband. He did not kidnap us. We are his wives. The agent, Harris, actually laughed. It was a short, barking sound. Wives, all 3 of you? That is pagan savagery. That is illegal. Sergeant, this is clearly a den of outlaws and heathens. Arrest them all. The man for hanging. The women for transport. A soldier, a young man with nervous eyes, stepped forward. He reached for Sani, the smallest, the easiest one to take. Come on, girl. No trouble. Do not touch her, Eli snarled. The soldier flinched, startled by the venom in his voice. He was young, and he was scared. He raised his rifle, not to shoot, but to shove, to use the barrel to push Eli back. He raised it towards Sani. It was the one thing Eli could not allow. He moved. He was not thinking of the odds. He was not thinking of the rifles. He was only thinking of Sani's face, of the soldier's gun. He dove forward, tackling the young soldier, his shoulder driving into the man's stomach. He wrapped his arms around him, trying to get the rifle, to turn it away from her. The canyon exploded with a sound so loud it seemed to crack the sky. Agent Harris, his face a mask of sudden panic, had drawn his sidearm and fired. Eli felt it, a white-hot, tearing pain in his back. Low, near his side, it felt like a red-hot poker had been shoved through his body. He grunted, his strength vanishing in a single, breath-stealing instant. He collapsed on top of the soldier he was tackling. Eli! Sani's scream was not a human sound. It was a razor, a sound of a soul being torn in two. The world dissolved into chaos. The soldiers, confused, were still on their horses. The agent was fumbling, trying to aim his pistol again. But Nayland and Tala were no longer women. They were an echo of the blizzard. They were death. Nayland, who had been standing empty-handed, had moved. In the second it took the agent to fire. She had sprinted to the pony tied nearby, not to flee, but for the bow and quiver slung from the saddle. The sergeant with the mustache saw her. He raised his rifle. Hostile! Fire! An arrow, Nalen's, sprouted from his throat before he could finish the word. He dropped his rifle, his hands clutching the shaft, and toppled sideways from his horse. Tala was already in motion. She was a blur of pure, focused rage. She ignored the soldiers and ran straight for the man who had shot Eli. The agent, Harris, saw her coming, a small, dark woman with a face of stone and a knife in her hand. He tried to fire, but he was a desk man. He was slow. Tala did not slow down. She ran onto the young soldier Eli had tackled, using his body as a springboard. She launched herself into the air, her knife held high. She plunged it into the agent's chest, just below the ribs, driving it upward with all her strength. The agent's gun went off, the bullet kicking up dust at his own feet. He looked down at the knife in his chest, his eyes wide with a terrible surprise, and slid to the ground. The two remaining soldiers were trying to get their horses under control. One raised his rifle, aiming at Nalin, who was knocking another arrow. Sani, who had been frozen, weeping over Eli, looked up. She saw the soldier aiming at her sister. With a shriek of blind fury, she grabbed a heavy, softball-sized rock from the fire pit. She threw it with all her might. It hit the soldier in the side of the head. He yelled, his shot going wild. Nalen's second arrow took him in the chest. He fell. The last man was the young soldier Eli had tackled. He was scrambling to his feet, his rifle lost. He looked at the carnage. 3 soldiers and 1 agent dead in less than 10 seconds. He looked at Nalin, her bow still drawn. He looked at Tala, who was pulling her knife from the agent's body, her face smeared with blood. He dropped his pistol. He raised his hands. "No, please, I give up, Tala did not stop. She had seen what soldiers did. She had seen what mercy got them. She walked straight to him, her knife low. "Tala, no!" Nalen shouted. But the soldier, in his terror, made a move for his dropped gun. Tala's knife flashed once, a sharp, clean arc across his throat. He fell, his hands grasping the wound, his surrender turning into a wet, dying gurgle. Silence. The canyon was silent. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air. 6 men were dead. Sani was not looking. She was on her knees, her hands pressed to the terrible, bubbling wound in Eli's back. "He is alive!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Nalin, help me! He is alive! He is breathing!" He was barely. They carried him, the 3 of them, their husband, their protector, who had taken a bullet for them. They carried him to the new stone house, which was not yet finished, and laid him on their softest furs. The bullet had gone through. It was a terrible, tearing wound, low on his right side, just above the hip. It had missed his spine, but it had torn through his guts. He was bleeding, inside and out. They worked. They were no longer fighters. They were healers. They stopped the bleeding with handfuls of dried spiderwebs and moss. Nalen packed the wound with a poultice of yarrow, an herb to stop the blood. Sani, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the cup, forced hot, bitter willow bark tea between his lips for the pain. Tala stood guard, her bloody knife still in her hand, her eyes on the canyon entrance, daring the world to send more. He burned. For 3 days, he was in a red, howling desert of fever. He did not know them. He spoke to his dead wife, Anna. He cried out for his child, Little Bird. He argued with the deputy he had killed. The women did not leave him. They sat, one on each side, one at his feet. They bathed him. They forced water into him. They prayed. Sani sang to him, the small, quiet songs of her childhood. Nalen whispered the old Apache prayers, begging the spirits to anchor his soul to the earth. Tala just held his hand, her grip like iron, as if she could physically hold him back from the edge of death. While he fought, they dealt with the bodies. They could not leave them. The world would come looking for an agent and 4 soldiers. It took them a full day. They took the horses, all of them, and led them miles into the high desert, scattering them. They took the rifles, the pistols, the ammunition. They took the warrants, the papers, and burned them in their fire until only black ashes remained. Then they dug in the woods, far from their spring. They dug a single, deep, wide grave. They dragged the 6 men and laid them side by side, the agent, the soldiers. Nalin stood over the open grave, Tala and Sani at her side. They were exhausted, spattered with blood and dirt. Nalin sang. She sang the song for the dead, asking the spirits to forgive the souls of the men who had come to harm them. She sang for the young soldier who had looked so scared. She sang for the agent who had been bound by his own cruel laws. Then she performed the rite for the living. She took ash from their fire and mixed it with water. She daubed it on her forehead, on Tala's, on Sani's. They had taken life. They had defended their home. They were bound by this act. Forever. They filled the grave, covering the last trace of the outside world. On the 4th day, Eli's fever broke. He woke up. The world was not red. It was a dull, aching gray. The pain was a living thing, a wolf chewing on his insides. But he was alive. He was in the stone house. Sani was asleep on the floor at his feet, her hand resting on his ankle. Tala was dozing by the door, the carbine in her lap. Nalin was by the fire, carving something. He tried to move. A groan escaped him. Instantly, Nalin was at his side. Her face was thin, exhausted, but her eyes were clear. "Be still. You are alive. You are home." He licked his dry, cracked lips. "What?" "They are gone," she said. "We are safe. You are safe." He saw what she held in her hand. It was a small, white ring, carved from a piece of bone. It was from the goat the dogs had killed, the one they had all eaten. She had been working on it while she watched him, carving it and smoothing it with sandstone. She took his left hand. His hand was scarred, the knuckles split, the skin rough. She gently slid the bone ring onto his 4th finger. It was a perfect, snug fit. He looked at the ring. It was white, simple, and as strong as the rock of the canyon. He looked up at her, his eyes asking the questions his dry throat could not. Nalin touched the ring on his finger, her own finger tracing its smooth, unbroken circle. "You came here," she said, her voice a low, soft whisper. "You wanted only sleep, a place to rest." She met his gaze. Her eyes were full of his fever, his pain, and a love as fierce and as hard as the land itself. But the spirits had a different plan. "You are no longer just a man, Eli Morgan. Now you are part of our breath. You breathe for us. We breathe for you. You are our husband. You are home." The scar on Eli Morgan's back healed, but it remained a map of the day their new world was born in blood. It was a puckered, angry-looking thing that pulled at his skin, a constant reminder. But he was alive. His recovery had been slow, a painful crawl from the red fog of fever back to the light. The women had saved him. They had willed him to live. A year passed. The seasons turned, marking time not by a calendar, but by the land itself. The spring, which had seen him near death, swelled with life. The canyon, their hidden refuge, became a fortress of their own making. The small, hurried garden plots were plowed, expanded. The corn grew high, a thick green wall that hid the stone house from view. The beans and squash, planted from Sani's ancestral seeds, provided a bounty they had never known. Summer was a dry, white heat, filled with the sounds of work. The stone house was finished. It was not a large place, but it was solid, with thick walls Eli had built to stop a bullet, and a deep-set door. The roof was made of thick pine beams he and Tala had hauled down from the high country, covered with sod. It was cool in the summer and would be warm in the winter. It was a home. Autumn brought the harvest. The smell of drying corn and herbs filled the air. The goat herd, which had been so close to destruction, was now strong. The 5 ewes had given birth, and the herd was now a dozen strong, their bleating a constant, reassuring sound. And with the goats, another sound, one that Eli had thought he would never hear again in his lifetime, the sound of a child's laughter. His name was Quito. He was Sani's younger cousin, though the family lines were so broken that cousin was a word for any survivor. Naylan and Tala had found him wandering near the ruins of an old settlement, the only one left alive after a sickness had swept through. He was 8 years old, silent with trauma, his eyes like 2 burned holes in a blanket. They brought him to the canyon. Eli had looked at the boy, his hands clenching, his heart a cold, hard knot. He saw Little Bird. He saw the child he had failed. He turned away, unable to look, and went to chop wood, the axe rising and falling in a rhythm of pure, undirected rage. But the canyon was a place of healing. Sani, her own heart full, sat with the boy for days, not talking, just sharing his silence. Tala, who had lost her own son, would bring him small things, a smooth rock, a bird's feather. She did not coddle him. She simply acknowledged him. One day, Quito followed Eli to the stream. Eli was carving, a habit he had picked up to keep his hands busy. He was carving a small, simple horse from a piece of willow. Quito sat and watched, his dark eyes following the movement of the knife. Eli finished. He held the small, rough toy in his palm. He looked at it, then at the boy. He did not say a word. He just held it out. Quito looked at the horse for a long time. Then, his small, dirt-caked hand reached out and took it. He closed his fingers around it, tight. It was the first thing that was his. The next day, Quito spoke his first word. He pointed at the mottled pony. Horse. Now, months later, the boy's laughter was the sound of the canyon's survival. The 4 of them had become a family, their roles defined by their strengths. Naylan was the head. She was the healer, the leader. Her knowledge of the land was what kept them alive. The area around the house was thick with the herbs she gathered, drying in the sun, hanging from the rafters. She was the one who saw the future, the one who planned, the one who rationed. She was the mind. Tala was the shield. Her rage had cooled and hardened into a protective shell. She was the hunter, the guard. She still sang, but her songs were different now. The morning song was gone. She sang songs of work, songs of strength, her voice a low, clear melody as she skinned a deer or ground the corn. She sang to Quito, harsh, funny songs about coyotes and brave warriors that made him laugh. She had found her purpose, not in grief, but in protection. Her hate for the world outside had not lessened, but her love for the world inside had finally become stronger. And Sani was the heart. She had bloomed. The fearful girl was gone, replaced by a woman of quiet, steady joy. She was in charge of the garden, the goats, the fire. She made their home clean and bright. She was the life of the canyon. And now, she carried more life. She was pregnant. Her body, once thin, was now round and full with Eli's child. The knowledge of it had settled a new, profound peace on all of them. It was the ultimate act of defiance against the world that had tried to erase them. They were not just surviving. They were growing. Eli watched her one afternoon as she sat by the fire, mending one of Quito's shirts. Her face was soft in the light, her hand resting on her belly. He felt a love so fierce, so painful. It almost brought him to his knees. It was a love terrified of loss, a love he had sworn he would never feel again. But here it was. He was a father again, a husband. He spent his days teaching Quito. He taught him the things a father teaches a son. He took him to the old mottled pony. You were scared of this horse once, Eli told Sani as she watched, her hand in his. Quito is not. He lifted the boy onto the pony's back. Quito was small, but his back was straight. You do not pull on him, Eli said, his hands on the boy's hands. showing him how to hold the reins. You do not fight him. You tell him where you are going. You are the leader. He is the legs. You are one thing. He taught him to use a knife, not as a weapon, but as a tool. He gave him his own piece of willow. You look at the wood, he said, his own knife moving slowly. You see what is inside it. You are not making it. You are just letting it out. Quito would sit for hours, his tongue stuck out in concentration, peeling away thin, white slivers of wood, trying to find the shape inside. The past was not forgotten. It lived with them, a ghost at their fire, but they spoke of it now. At night, after Quito was asleep, the four of them would sit outside the stone house, watching the stars. I still see his face, Tala said one night, her voice low. Chaco, the man she had killed. Sometimes, in my dreams, he is still hunting me. He is dead, Eli said, his voice quiet. He put his hand on hers. We are alive. I see my father, Naylin said, her gaze on the constellations her father had taught her. I see him hanging from that tree. I see the agent smiling. The agent is dead, too, Eli said. He looked at the bone ring on his finger. We are alive. I see Anna, Eli said, the first time he had spoken her name in this new life. I see her, holding our baby. Sometimes I feel like I have betrayed her by being here, by being happy. Sani, pregnant with his child, leaned her head on his shoulder. She would not want you to be alone. She would not want your heart to be a grave. A grave is a cold place, Naylin said softly. This is a home. We are not replacing what we lost. We are building something new from the broken pieces. She looked at the stone house. We built this with thick walls to keep the world out. But the doors are open, Eli said. He was thinking of Quito. This was proven a month later. Eli and Tala were on a hunt, moving far into the foothills, tracking a small herd of pronghorn. They were moving in their usual silence when Tala froze, pulling Eli behind a granite boulder. She pointed. Across the valley, huddled in a dry wash, was a family, a man, a woman, and two small children. They were not Apache. They were mixed. The man looked to be Mexican, the woman a Paiute. They were starving. Their horse was a skeleton, and they were trying to eat the roots of a yucca plant. They were watching the horizon, their faces hollow with fear. Prospectors, Eli whispered. No, Tala said. Fugitives, like us. Eli's first instinct was to hide, to back away. More people meant more smoke, more tracks, more danger. Tala read his mind. They will die here, she said. It was a simple statement of fact. She looked at him. My son died like that. Hunted, starving. She stood up. Tala, no! Eli hissed, grabbing her arm. She pulled her arm free. We are not them, she said, nodding toward the unseen soldiers, the agents, the world. If we are, then we have already lost. She walked out into the open, her empty hands raised. The man scrambled for a rifle, but the woman stopped him. They were too weak to fight. That night, the family was at their fire. They ate the last of the corn stew, their hands shaking. They told their story. They had been run off their small patch of land by a cattle baron who wanted their water. They were running, with nowhere to go. The canyon, once a hidden refuge, had become a sanctuary. The land was still dangerous. Eli and Tala doubled their patrols, watching the trails. They knew the world was still out there, still watching. The man who had fled the blizzard was still a story being told in some distant fort. But they were no longer alone. Word spread, not by riders, but on the invisible network of the displaced and the broken. A whisper of a place, a safe canyon, a place run by 3 Apache women and a white man, a place where the law of the agents did not reach. 2 months later, an old Apache woman, bent and wrinkled, walked into the canyon, leading a mule. She was Nalin's aunt, her mother's sister, thought long dead. They wept in each other's arms. Then a young man, half Comanche, half white, who had escaped the brutality of a reservation school, found his way there. A new community was forming. It was not a tribe of one bloodline. It was a chosen family, built from the remnants. It was built on the law of survival, the love of the broken, and a shared rejection of the world that had tried to destroy them. Eli was no longer just a husband. Nalin was no longer just a leader. They were the founders of a new thing, a town called Sanctuary, though it had no name but home. One afternoon, in the late autumn, Eli stood by the cottonwood tree that grew near the spring. It was the oldest thing in the canyon, its bark thick and scarred. He took his knife, the one he used for carving. He carved their names into the bark. Nalin, Tala, Sani. And at the bottom, he carved his own. Eli. He looked at the names. It was not an act of ownership, not a brand. It was a memory. It was a promise. The cabin in Texas was ash. The graves of Anna and Little Bird were lost. But this would remain. He had lost his place. And here, he had carved a new one, right into the living wood of the land. Winter came again, this time gentle. The stone house was warm. The storehouse was full of dried corn, smoked meat, and roots. Sani's time came. It was a cold, clear night, the stars so bright they seemed to scrape the sky. Nalin and her aunt, the old woman, delivered the baby. Tala held Sani's hands, while Eli held Quito outside, the two of them staring at the door, listening to Sani's muffled cries. Then a new cry, small but strong. Nalin came to the door, her face tired but glowing. "You have a daughter, Eli Morgan." The story ends on a quiet note. A few weeks later, the four of them are sitting by the fire in the stone house. The wind howls beyond the canyon, a wild, lonely sound. But inside, it is warm. The air smells of pine smoke and milk. Quito is asleep on a mat. Tala is mending a moccasin, her song a low, soft hum. Nalin is watching the flames, a deep, quiet peace on her face. Sani is in the rocking chair Eli had made for her, a baby bundled in her arms, nursing. Eli Morgan, a man who had once been a solitary, hunted ghost, looked at his family. He looked at the thick stone walls, at the full storehouse, at the bone ring on his hand, at the face of his new daughter. He whispered, his voice rough with an emotion he could not name. "Guess I found more than a place to sleep." Nalin turned her head, her dark eyes finding his in the firelight. A small, wise smile touched her lips. "You found what no man dared to dream. Thank you for listening to our story. Let us know what you thought about Eli and the Apache brides in the comments. And tell us where you are listening from so we can all connect. Please subscribe to the Wild West Campfire channel for more stories like this.